I think the most useful thing I've realized is that the way I'd set myself that regimen with Levinas was wrong. You don't give yourself a page count to read every day. Give yourself a slice of time every day. It's a very big difference.
Baby, come, clapping on this, clapping on this, clapping on this, hey.
So I wanted to end by having you talk to us about how to read theory.
Ooh.
Because so many people start and they immediately get overwhelmed by the first page. That happens so often. But I like the way you talk very practically about your reading regimen and how to really thoughtfully go through these books. So can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah. So first of all, I would have never really actually engaged a text. I would have just Sparks noticed it if I hadn't gotten an F on my first thing I wrote about Plato's Republic. Getting that F made me go, well, it made me go to the professor's office and ask, what the hell? And then he's just like, look, philosophy is not something you do at the beach casually. You can't Sparks notes it. You literally got to actually struggle with the text. And if you're not setting aside the necessary time and energy to actually struggle with the text, then of course you're not going to be able to do it. He's like, I'm talking about setting aside 3 hours and not bringing your phone. Okay, so that was some really good advice. Then the first thing that I actually read on my own that was self-directed was over Christmas break, probably a year and a half later. And it was Emmanuel Levinas's Totality and Infinity. That was like, I'm going to read this over Christmas break, and I'm going to read 40 pages a day. And actually, I was reading 20 pages of that book and then 20 pages of a companion text every day. And I actually did it, and I finished it. And that was the first time that I actually finished one of these kinds of goals that I set myself. Because usually I don't, I'm going to do this thing, and then I don't do it. Actually finishing it left me feeling really fulfilled, but I didn't really understand what I'd read. I was like, this was such a... And then the thing is the next semester kicks in, I wasn't really able to go back and spend the time, going back over things. So I felt like, well, was that a waste of time? I don't feel like I really understood what I read. A few months later, I was like, I was thinking about something, and I was using this concept, and I was like, wait, I think I got this from Levinas. I was like, I think I remember this was in the book, and I went looking for it, and then I read it, and I was like, I didn't understand this passage when I read it, but now I'm not only understanding it right now, but I was also just using it all these months after having read this book. How was it that I was using this without even having understood it the first time I read it? And I don't understand. But it's like your brain, it keeps working in the background. And so you fed this new information to the brain, and then it's back there, and it's just like cooking, just doing its thing. And somehow it's working. And so you kind of have to trust this process. Obviously you'll need clarification. Obviously that's not enough to understand a book. Obviously you will hopefully want to come back and reread the book. But the most important thing is that if it's worth doing, it's worth doing again. And you can't know that it's worth doing it again unless you've done it the first time. So the perfectionist ideal and the ideal that you have to finish the books that you start, that is anti-intellectual as hell. It actually discourages people from even beginning. If you believe that, you couldn't even have this many books and live with yourself.
I know, there's a lot of these that I haven't read all the way.
And people, how many of those books have you read on your bookshelf? Because I sit in front of a bookshelf and it's not a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm working on it. It's best to just, get over the fixation on reading everything. And it's get over the fixation of finishing everything. Yet at the same time, breathe and say, if this is really worth understanding, I'll know in 6 months when I want to come back to it. Right now, I'm getting acquainted. I think it's Hegel, it might have been Aristotle, said that to properly read a text, you have to read it 3 times. First, to get a basic feel for the territory. Second is to understand it. So the first one is to get the feel for the territory. The second one is to understand it. And the third one is to run it up against everything else you already know and all these other things that you've read. And people say, I would never have the time and energy or attention to be able to actually work on it in that sustained way. Well, first of all, that's my whole critique of capitalism right there, is the time energy critique, and there's a video about that. But I think the most useful thing I've realized is that the way I'd set myself that regimen with Levinas was wrong. You don't give yourself a page count to read every day. Give yourself a slice of time every day.
Mm.
It's a very big difference.
Yeah.
Because if you're trying to read 20 pages a day, then you're flipping pages like, am I almost there yet? Am I almost there? The whole time you're thinking, am I almost there yet? This reading of Volume 1, Capital Volume 1, is the first time that I said 45 minutes a day, and I can go over that. I can, and if I spend the whole time on 5 pages, that's valid. It's changed everything.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I did was I set the 45 minutes is not long. I mean, really, the thing is with something like, with either reading or video editing, two things that I love, you can't really get much out of it in 45 minutes. You kind of want to go for a couple hours. But the thing is if you set a couple hours as your, I will do this every day, things are going to come up. It's going to be a lot easier to fall off of that, to fail. You'll be doing catch-up work. You'll be beating yourself up about it. 45 minutes, but you can go over. It gets that foothold in your life every day. And by giving it that, I think that you get a lot more traction. And I'm not sitting here thinking, how many more pages are left? I'm just like, you're able to tarry with the text.
That's good.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how you get these books and they feel so long, such a large tome. But then when you're able to just set aside 45 minutes a day, read it bit by bit every single day, eventually you're like, oh wow, I've actually read a significant amount of this.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, the other, I guess we're talking about regimens. This is a leftist show. So let's talk about this for a second. Everyone says you need to read Capital unless they're like, oh, Marxist. Right. You don't need to. But for the people who say you need to, you don't need to. Nobody needs to read Capital. And to look, if you have to read 3 books this size to have a valid opinion, no, it's not going to work out. But if you want to change society and you want to understand what's fundamentally wrong with it, everybody who's read it says that this is a really important piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good goal. And I'm just saying, like, don't feel the need to tackle Capital alone. There will probably be opportunities to do it with people who've been over the territory before, which will help save a lot of time. And you know, if you really want to get started, you know, David Harvey's he's read that book every year for 20 years and he's taught it. And there's a lecture series on that about, you know, on YouTube, which is fantastic. But Marx also wrote essays. Marx wrote essays. This is the part that, like, when people are like, you just got to read Capital, it's like, well, I mean, he wrote essays.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can read Estranged Labor. You can read Wage, Labor, and Capital. You can read Value, Price, and Profit. Those are just 3 essays. And if you were to read the 3 essays, and one of them was in the form of a lecture, I would say that those 3 essays, if you're new to theory, pick one of them, read it with the intention of rereading it later, revisit it later. And if you can do all 3, do all 3. And don't worry about Capital. You'll get to it when you get to it. You need to trust your future self to be able to handle it. But in the meantime, an essay is not much. An essay can be done in an afternoon. You really could read Estranged Labor in an afternoon. It's free on Marxist.org. And I think that we need to reinvent the idea of the canon. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of reasons to be really critical of the canon or of canonizing certain texts. Yeah. But God damn it, we need starter packs. We need starter packs for people. And maybe we need to have a lot of arguments about what is even in those starter packs. Look, if you can't get past the first page of Marx because he's using so many big words and talking in weird ways, that's normal. You're normal. That's valid. It's okay. And you also don't have to keep reading right now because this is an issue with the level of your reading comprehension itself, because reading comprehension is a muscle just like everything else. And muscles have to be worked out. And so if you want to work out that muscle by taking on the heaviest weight champion of theory when it comes to capital, go for it. But if you're also not an extremist when it comes to challenges, go read Four Futures by Peter Fraze. Go read the ABCs of Socialism by Verso Press and Jacobin. Go read Capitalist Realism. Those are books that are fantastic intros. Four Futures, absolutely, should be in any starter pack. So really, remember, you want the challenge to be enough that it isn't easy reading. Mm-hmm. You want to always be up against a challenge, but you don't want the challenge to be so overwhelming that it crushes you. Flow, the optimal form of human experience, according to Mihai Csikszentmihalyi in the book Flow, he argues that flow is found in the right balance between interest, so you're interested in reading the book, challenge, it's a worthy challenge, and the level of your skill for taking on that challenge. Now, if the skill is if your skills are low and the challenge is high, anxiety and being crushed under the weight of the challenge is likely. And if it's reversed, mm-hmm. if you are up to the challenge, but the challenge is actually, it's too easy, well, then you're bored and you're getting distracted. So it really, when you feel distracted by a book, this is when you feel like, welcome to the club. Everyone's distracted. Mm-hmm. This is the attention economy we live in. And so, but it's worth exercising focus on in the first case. But second, if you're not struggling with understanding the words that you're reading, then you're not exercising your reading comprehension. Mm-hmm. Now, you don't want that struggle to be so much that it crushes you. So obviously you have to gauge that. But just remember, it's a muscle. It's a muscle worth exercising.
Yeah, very much a muscle. And even I'm sure plenty of people out there have experienced when you work out actual muscles, you notice, oh, that thing that I used to really struggle doing, I now can do so easily. And that happens with reading. I've experienced when I first started reading theology and philosophy, I remember it felt overwhelming for a while. This is too much. And I could barely read some of these other books that aren't even technically theology and philosophy. But then when I started reading them, I then went back to some of the books that I kind of struggled with, and I just breezed right through all of them. Uh-huh. It's like I'm sure everyone out there has books you kind of struggle with and then really struggle with. When you get good at the really struggle, the kind of is psh, you just float right through them because it's like a muscle that you've trained. And it doesn't stay that way as you continue to read and read and read. Yeah,
I would just ask that if you've watched this video, that you consider commenting below about what regimens you've tried, which ones have worked, which ones haven't worked, why you think that is, and what you think good starter packs for theory might be. And what you think, what would be the 3 texts you would definitely recommend or 3 essays you would definitely recommend for people getting started? And what would you say are the different levels of entry? And if you're wondering about my own starter pack, I have kind of made a reading list. It's on Goodreads. Look up Theory Pleeb on Goodreads. I've made a list on there. It's something I haven't revisited in a while, but I'm hoping that by looking at the comment section here in the future, I'll be able to be like, oh my gosh, that's genius. Because there's obviously different reading comprehension grade levels when it comes to theory. And we're telling elementary school, just read Marx. It's well, some people can, but not everyone. So yeah, obviously not me.
Thank you for watching, everybody. Go subscribe to Theory Pleeb right now. Also, check out all the links in the description below. And make sure you also follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/whoisdamon, where we stream every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Also, this clip that you just watched was the second clip I've posted, a part of this longer hour-and-a-half interview I did with Theory Pleeb, so you could check out the entire thing if you become a patron. Go and become my patron on patreon.com/Damon Garcia. I really appreciate the support. Also, shout out my patrons already there: Karen in Colorado, Ranger Jenny, Refined Your Scene, James Finlay, New Transcendentalist, Kristen Mouse, Mike Topman, Peter John Blake, Rob Hutton, Jack, Theory Pleeb, Jacob McCarthy, Mike Lodato, Frank Morales, Vema Pasa, They Were Monsters, and Julianne King. Thank you all. I appreciate all the support. Man, this list is getting a little bit long. So long that I will eventually soon get to the point where it'll be too long of a list for me to list all the names at the end. So go and become a patron while you still can get your name in at the end. Okay, cool. Thank you. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.